Hello, and welcome to the Love Life, Live Life Fitness podcast, the premier podcast where we talk about topics ranging from health and fitness, performance and sport, and wellness and rehabilitation. We tie these topics together to understand their impact on our daily lives and our journey to be the best version of ourselves. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. Today, we would like to welcome Gio. Gio, thank you for coming on, and would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Ange, man, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is an honor, man. I used to host a podcast myself, and then, along came little baby girl, and then away went the free time. So, thanks for taking the free time, man. Myself, just to tell you who I am, and a little bit about my background. Gio Grassi. I'm the director of sports science, applied sports sciences here at Monmouth University, right on the Jersey Shore. So, going into my sixth football season here. So, I've been pretty blessed to be in one location and. With my job title and description, I'll be able to just, analyze our players through longitudinal data sets here versus, being at one place and then getting to another place and never really having that long-term, assessment of a specific player over 3 to 4 years. But prior to here, I was at Fordham University in the Bronx where I was just an assistant strength coach. Dove a ton into force velocity profiling and VBT training over there with the gym aware system. And then that's kind of how I began to develop my mindset with force velocity profiling in the weight room. And then here at Monmouth, obviously we do it weight room and on the field, a little bit of horizontal and vertical profiling there with our players. But prior to Fordham, I was with the New York Giants in 2017. That was an awesome experience. First time working with pros there, and then just seeing how working with pros is obviously a lot different than working with collegiate athletes, but you get to see like the backbone of how everyone has trained through college when they get to the NFL level, like how that training has developed them and then, ultimately like improve their performance to where their current state is at in the professional levels. Just, you get guys from all over the place. You get like, your Texas guys, your A&M guys, your LSU, your West Coast schools, your Big Ten schools. And it's like, man, you got your heavy hit lifters, you got your bouncy plyo guys out the South. So it's just interesting to see how like everyone responded to their training to get to that level, and then how the individualization became of that. Working with the coaches there, Marcus Paul, Joe Danos, Aaron Wellman, Rodney Hill. So it was just an awesome experience, working alongside those people and being at the pro level. Prior to there, I was a GA at Fairleigh Dickinson in Teaneck, New Jersey. Very small school, no football, just basketball. Prior to there, I was at Precy Speed School for 5 years, and that's where I got my foundation of speed training and development, where I still carry that system over today because it's effective and it worked, working alongside Martin Rooney, Bill Parisi, Steve Leo, and all the great coaches that I had the opportunity to be with there. Taught me a ton about speed and agility training, and we still carry those principles today into, 10 plus years into my career, so nothing has changed on that end. Prior to that, I was at Dell State University as an undergrad. Kind of where I got my sports science degree and where I started to learn more about biomechanics and strength and conditioning and just athletic training in general. And then that's where I built my appreciation of it. I actually had a great collegiate strength coach, Raymond Braithwaite. He's actually the head of Iowa. Been there for a few years. I want to say been there for almost a decade now, but he actually intrigued me into wanting to be a strength coach. Just the whole philosophy and the aspect of programming and periodization, and that's stuff that you don't really know until you get to the collegiate level and you learn it, and then you're in the classroom really digging into it, and then you're like, man, this is awesome, and you see your attributes increase, your strength levels, your speed, all that fun stuff, and it's like, this is a fun job. It's a great job, and then you take that and then you develop over time, and then, here I'm at, I don't even know how many years later. I want to say 16 years later. Sounds old as hell, but still feel young at heart. But yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Before college, obviously Jersey City raised, Italy born. And I've been lucky enough to stay in the state of New Jersey around family throughout my whole coaching career. So that's been a blessing.
That's awesome, man. Man, you got a great background, great career. And I mean, you've been around different places, looking and learning from coaches who are at Iowa all the way, up in the Northeast around that Jersey, New York area. How would you say right now those experiences have kind of led you to where you're at now and kind of help build the foundation of what you're doing at Monmouth?
Yeah, I think it helped a ton because I would say this for young coaches as well. When you have an opportunity to learn under a specific person or coach, it's not about where they're at in that current state of you interning for them or being assistant under them or grad assistant in that nature, but it's more about the background of where that coach came from and who they worked with, and you start to understand that, man, this coach has been at X amount of universities or pro teams, and then all their inherited learning and trial and errors and mistakes all led to that point where now you have inherited knowledge through them, but now you have the opportunity to have a trial and error period into your coaching career and learn from their mistakes, but continue to build. So I want to say all the coaches I've worked with helped me get to where I'm at today, just because of the conversations and the curiosity of just learning from their mistakes, but also taking away their successes and building upon them into my own mistakes and my own trials and errors to find my own successes. So it's been great. I think I've been around some awesome, great coaches, some very smart and intelligent people, driving different conversations. And there's a bunch of guys I still keep up with today that I coached with 10 years ago that I haven't seen in person in years, that we still text on a day-to-day basis. And it's just, the conversation of, I don't know how we got to here, but it just developed over time, and how the curiosity of just the mind works. But it's helped shape my development. It's helped shape my career advancement, and kind of going from a strength coach to now just a sports science role, where I think having the strength coach background helped me a ton now, because when I see data, I can make a decision based on just interpretation from the coach's eye, right? So it's like, you know how to squat, how Nordic hamstring curls should look like. And then when you put a guy on a Nord board or whatever, you can assess, okay, hey, it's high force output, but was it good quality of repetition and movement, or is it high force output with inefficient movement? And then that ultimately can lead to injury, where not having the coach's eye, someone might say, hey, that's high force, that's good. Well, the interpretation of high force is either good or no good based on quality of movement. So I think that the coach's eye helped, and the relationships I built over time with working alongside certain people helped me, especially in the space that I'm in right now.
That's awesome. And I think that's really good. I mean, and credit to you being like thankful for the people who have got you to where you're at, and the people that you've learned from and conversated with, because, that is really important. We all get to a point where, we might be in a position where, we're a director, assistant director, or in a position where we're making decisions over the populations that we're working with. However, understanding those small conversations sometimes, and even those things that we learn from internships, grad assistantships, or even just shadowing or volunteering, all those kind of really do culminate to help us into what do we do or interact with on a daily basis. I think it's really cool you brought up the point about, blending that coaching eye and how that strength conditioning background really helped you with being in a sports science role now. How would you also say that that coach's eye really, how it blends with sports science? Would you mind like elaborating on that a little more?
Yeah, I think it blends because people confuse sports science with just advanced technology and metrics and data. Right? Sports science is really like everything involved. The technology just gives us one more lens to put on. We can actually calculate someone's conditioning just based on repetitions and yards, and then boom, that's your volume. You really don't need a GPS sensor for that. But I think what the coach's eye helps with is understanding what the data can tell in visualization of what the story might want to be when we're talking about specific players and either a certain outcome or an outcome that happened from a certain event. But the one thing I will tell people with sports science, it gets tricky because what the data you collect is just the moment in that specific time. So when someone jumps on a force plate, boom, that specific 1 second in time is all that metric is telling us about. It's not telling us about 12 to 24 hours prior to, although that stuff leads into it. So I think the coach's eye sense is, okay, after a game, if you're going to jump someone, have your assumptions, have your questions ready to be answered, and then, make your decisions based on data. But use data to guide decisions. Don't use data to make a decision. There's times when, we'll have players and I'm telling them, hey, we're not going in the ice bath today. We want high stress. We want you to feel the stress. We want you to be sore. Hey, we're not going to pull you out of a session based on certain data, or we're not going to alter your strength program based on your jump data for today, because we want that response. As a strength coach, what your adaptations should be. So I think people should blend, the lens of, hey, a strength coach, what's the program end goal going to be in a sports science sense? Just because someone's quote unquote red flagging in a certain aspect of a data collection process, that shouldn't be the ultimatum of change. So I think having the coach's eye and the understanding of programming and adaptation, that helps in making those decisions. Like there's times when we're on a very heavy eccentric program and your braking rate of force and all that stuff goes down on a force plate. But my thing to coaches, hey, that's assumed. That's going to go down with the type of training. So that we're all fine. There's no red flag. Nobody needs to be nervous and pull a guy. The trainers don't need to put him on a specific regimen in terms of any type of rehab that they might need. So it's all assumed. So I think that's where the coach's eye helps in terms of assisting with that day-to-day decision making.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think like with all that being said, context does matter. And it matters a lot in terms of like you mentioned, if you're on like a certain program where certain metrics that you might be looking at, if they know they're going to be down because of the programming and how the body's going to adapt, I think that's one that context is one alone. If someone's coming in on the beginning of a week, but and throughout the weekend they had like a couple games or something where they were going to have a stimulus that's going to cause them to feel a certain way, that context matters compared to looking at a time point at one time. And I think, there is value to looking at a test because, when you're testing, you are testing, and that is, it's a data point. So it could be meaningful or not, but, all that context does matter. Looking at something longitudinally, that might be great for understanding how they're adapting over time. But, it all matters with the context. And I think you really point to that a lot. But I think that's great. Like being able to blend that coach's eye, the strength conditioning, and the sports science. I know many places, I'm sure they're working on trying to do that exact same thing. And, that's why we're always like learning, trying to grow and, learn from other people's. I mean, I'm learning from you right now and seeing how things that you're doing. And so, yeah, no problem. I think it's just really cool to see how different people are doing things at other places because everybody you might be using some of the technologies, but depending on the population that you have, you might be looking at different things or trying to get different adaptations. So I think that's really cool though. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think also with that, just to add on, you're like starting to trigger my brain into thinking a little bit deeper. So also with that too is like, let's use GPS for example. So like I'll film all my guys on speed day, right? And our biggest KPI on speed day is obviously max speed, right? So we want to see our guys run fast. However, if mechanics start to not look well, okay, well that high speed metric puts them at a higher risk for injury. So it's almost like quality control at that point. Like, hey, that's what we want to aim for, 23, 24 miles per hour if we get there. But if you're 22, 23 miles per hour with poor technique, okay, he's at high risk, so we'll flag it that way versus, green flag and hey, he's within 8% of his PR. Same thing with jumps. People look at jumps and it's like, well, this guy's hey, his jump height's down, but he's moving a lot quicker. Well, what is the context behind him moving quicker? Are we watching the jumps or are we just telling him to go jump? So biggest thing I've been doing, I've been watching all our guys jump this whole year and a half, and it's like, okay, he jumped less, but he's moving quicker. Well, I can red flag that if I code it correctly into saying, hey, limited range of motion, right? Versus a guy that jumped higher with limited range. Okay, he's a lot more twitchier, stress shortened cycle operates better. So like you said, it's all about context, but also how we interpret it within the moment of time. Right, so I think that's the biggest takeaway because you might get a guy on Monday that's probably sore as hell from something he did on a Sunday for, whatever purposes he had intended for. But then if you jump him again on Thursday, the quality is different, right? So it's all about stress response in that nature, but also, the quality of how the test was performed and the biomechanics of it. So I think it's deeper than just data points and numbers,
Yeah, no, completely. It really is because I mean, at the end of the day, we're working with real people. Those real people. They have their own individual lives. And so not everybody is going to adapt the same, consensusly. There will probably be similar changes, but everybody might not be at the catching or adapting at the same rate too. So being aware of the context of the individual. Right now, how would you say your experiences, what you're doing now in sports science, strength conditioning, even with your time with professional athletes and collegiate athletes, how would you say all of those have kind of culminated to see how fitness has influenced your life?
Man, how fitness has influenced my life. I mean, I'll be honest, man, the fitness is, it's challenging to get to now just because workload and the kid, right? But, I mean, it influenced me a lot. I've always enjoyed, weight training since high school, all that stuff. But, ultimately, I don't know if sports science really had an impact on my fitness, more so just, being a competitive athlete. I was a place kicker at Dell State until that ended shortly. But just continuing that, because obviously it's all about, longevity and health in my sense. So like biggest things I try to focus on now: grip strength and just endurance, man. Right. When our skilled players are running tempos, I'm running right behind them as I'm counting their time down. But I'm not running for time. I'm just running for the sake of just health purposes, right? So that's how it's influenced me. But also, my daughter, she's 2, and I signed her up for this called Kid Strong, and we go every Saturday. Um, and it's fun. The kids have a great time. But me being a competitive, person, let alone a father, I'm always trying to push her to win the award at the end of the session. So, sometimes I need to peel back from that coach's, being a coach to my kid and just being a dad and have fun. But I've influenced it in the sense of like, okay, it was important to me, important to my life, with sport and without sport. So I, install that on my child as well. My wife is, she's active as well. So, we try to maintain an active household. My dog too, man. I got a pit bull. There's times I'll take him out in the yard and we'll just run sprints up and down in the yard. So I'm trying to keep him active. He's not overweight. He's actually very lean. So, it's funny. A good friend of mine, Joe Gilfeder, he's at Rutgers. We actually built a strong appreciation for health and nutrition when we were at Fordham together. And I still carry those principles over in my life today. And it's funny enough that we were texting the other day, and I sent him a picture of my daughter's after daycare snack, and it was like carrots and cucumbers and grapes. And I was like, man, what 2-year-old asks for cucumbers, carrots, and grapes after daycare? They're usually asking for like snacks and stuff like that. And he was like, man, Grassi, you're doing the right thing. Next thing you got to give her sardines. She'll be an Olympic athlete. So then I texted him back. I said, dude, my dog eats sardines for lunch. And he just like sent me a crying emoji. And I'm like, dude, you already know, man. It's like that's like how like much like health and fitness has like impacted me in terms of like, hey, making sure my child's healthy, make sure my household, even my dog, right? People's like, oh, he's just a dog. Well, he's got a life too, make sure he's healthy, right? He has longevity because they don't live long, so might as well try to, right? But also with my athletes, right? We don't have a full-time dietitian here, so I try to guide them in terms of, hey, if we're going to take vitamins, let's take the best ones. If we're going to take a protein supplement, hey, let's identify the best one. Let's stay away from the garbage stuff. Because I'm all about quality more than quantity, and I'm always aiming to see, who's and Bill Parisi installed this, Mark Rooney installed this in me way back long. I remember Mark Rooney saying, hey, when I traveled the world and I wanted to learn about med ball or jiu-jitsu or karate, I went to go find the best person in the world. I traveled there, I spent time with them, and I learned from the best. He learned from the Grassi family when it came to jiu-jitsu, stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, cool. So, hey, if I want to take what's the best vitamins? Well, I'll take Thorne vitamins because that's the best ones I can research. Who's the best protein product? Go take the best one. So that's like how it's been instilled in me and my thought process, and that's how I carried into dietary intake and fitness as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, having that like full lifestyle, work and family, but also
Yeah.
keep everything like well rounded to keep an active, healthy lifestyle. Because I mean, as we know, and as much research shows, there's so much benefit to like obviously nutritional side, but also like just being an active, healthy lifestyle to decrease those risks of mortality and other kind of more health risks. And so I think that factor of keeping an active and healthy lifestyle, that's awesome that you do it all the way from being with your daughter in terms of inspiring her and coaching her up, trying to get her to do her best, to you and your wife and your dog. I think that's just awesome, being able to fully enhance and just take care of the the life that you have here and the body that you do have. That's awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like as we grow, and it's funny you say it because like as we grow, I guess like your adult KPIs change to your athletes. They want to get stronger, they want to get faster. As an adult, you're like, man, I'm just trying to live longer. I'm trying to have more energy at the end of the day. I'm trying to not run the risk of heart disease or anything like that. So that's kind of how the mindset changes with time as we grow in age. Away from exercise. So.
I like that, the adult KPIs. You're gonna have to hold on to that.
Adult KPIs, yeah.
Okay, awesome, man. I just got a couple more questions for you. I was going to say, right now in your role and kind of your process from when you're all the way from like being a student and a student athlete and like going from there to where you're at now and going forward, what would you say is advice that you would give to others looking to be in similar roles that you're in, or roles in the health and fitness, sports science, sports performance, in this entire realm? What would you give to any people who are either students now or anyone looking to maybe make a change in their career? What advice would you give to them?
I mean, biggest advice I tell people is like, be a student of life, have the open mind to continue to learn. Even if you don't know much, having the mindset set up to, hey, I want to learn more. I want to be challenged with, a new process or, a new task, whether it's, changing your career or, manipulating your within career, like strength coach to sports science or, strength coach to administration, right? Put yourself in challenging positions to overcome. And I think the biggest thing is reaching out to people, cold calls. I mean, I'm a big cold call guy, and it's funny. I'll pick up the phone and call someone, and they'll say, "Man, Gio, I love the cold calls, man." So um, emails are tough because no one reads them. It's 2026, really, so no one read. I think trying to find someone's phone number or just send someone a DM on social media. Everyone's on it. That's the best way to reach out to someone who, say, you want to be in that person's position one day, not necessarily take their job, but be in the same capacity as them. Reach out to them, get to know them, share conversations, share some of your ideas, even though if you're a novice in the field, that helps because, having the conversation might, change the way your idea was at first into something that might become something great. So my biggest thing is continue to learn, be a student of life, and, never have the ego of you think you know it all, because there's certain times it's like the sports scientist wheel, like, hey, you know it all. It's like, man, I'm an idiot. You know it all, then damn, I'm an idiot, So reaching out to people is the best. Site visits is awesome because you get to see different workflows. And I think that's helped me a lot in my career. I've done a ton of site visits where I'm just, watching workflow, not necessarily the work that's being done, and kind of say, okay, how can I okay, hey, this is how they're doing this is how they're doing that. Okay, cool. And that's good. And I'm taking notes on just workflow operations. Okay, I can bring this back, and it's more of a, a service of change, and like, hey, how can we operate better? Because I'm always looking to be efficient and advance things and move on year after year. I'm never looking to stay stagnant with a certain workflow or something. I'm always have the mindset of, something can improve. There's always something that can improve. And I think once we have the mindset of everything was good, everything's great, keep it that way. I think that's where we begin to regress in life and, get usurped by other people in our careers. So, have the open mind and continue to develop. That's it.
Thank you, man. I think that's big. Like you said, continuing growth, trying to be better every day in what you're doing, and or getting better at something. I think that's huge. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. Thank you. Kind of to that point of trying to get better every day, and then just not being stagnant and trying to just really learn and just appreciate what you have and what you're doing. What does it mean for you to love your life and live your life?
I think for me, loving your life is just appreciating everything that happened and to what brought you to the moment you're in current day today. I'm not here to, judge people or, say I had a harder upbringing or, someone else grew up soft. That shouldn't be the case because, and it's fun. And I'll give you a quick background. So I grew up in Jersey City, right on Baldwin Avenue. So I didn't have, the richest parents. We were immigrants when we came to America. So we really started from nothing, from scratch, and then worked everything from that end. But, I never lived in the suburbs till I turned 35, so I'm like, okay. And it's funny, I was growing up as a teenager, you got that as a teenager, you think you run the world and you're 21, 22, 23, you think you could rule the world, right? So I remember always growing up and saying, these kids from the suburbs are soft, blah, blah, blah. But now I live in the suburbs. I'm like, you know what? Their parents did the right thing. They worked and they put them in the right situations, And unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everyone. But I think to love your life, you need to love your process. But you also need to fall in love with your process and how you're getting to where you want to go. Or if you're doing something like for my daughter, she's going to grow up in the suburbs. She's not going to know what life on Baldwin Avenue is like. And I always tell that to people. So, and to me, that's a blessing. And I want that for her. Right. Love your life, man. You got to love the moment. You got to love all the mistakes you made in your life. Live with no regrets, even if you have one, maybe two. I think that should be your maximum. What was the other one? You said love your life. My bad.
And what does it also mean to live your life?
And live your life. I think that's the most challenging one, especially if you're in a career. And even if it's a career outside of coaching, I think a lot of people fall into having an image. And I fall into that mistake as well, where it's like, I got the coach image and, people know me as Coach Gio, and trying to separate that self from my outside life, and just, living it versus not living in the moment of, hey, it's maybe, 8:00 on a Sunday. I'm like, I got to get ready for work tomorrow versus just living in the moment of enjoy this time because, and I tell my athletes this all the time, hey, right now it's boom, it's this day, hey, June 1st, 2026 is never going to happen again in your life. So how you do things on June 1st, 2026, right? That's it. It's in the record books. It's over, right? You either won that day, you lost that day, you did something with it, or you're never going to get that day back again. So that's how I try to live my life, in the sense of I'm never getting this time back, because we're only going to grow. We're only going to get older. We're never going to get younger. We could feel as young as we want. I feel like I'm 21 every day, but physically I'm not, right? Um,
No, no, it's all right. You are, we are. You know, you got the muscle going on, so we know. You're
nah,
20.
man. Not like the old days, but it's tough, because living your life is tough, Ange, because it's like I love my life, but there was a point in my life where I didn't love it, because it was hardship, and it was how am I going to get out of this situation, right? But I think, going through certain situations in life, even if you didn't have the rough upbringing, right, you still got to love what's around you, because that's it, man. God put you in these situations. Deal with it. Do something with it, right? We're not all getting dealt with a royal flush, right? There's a very rare few of the population that do, but at the same time, they have their challenges, right? Um, so to go back a little bit on love your life, I think you just, love everything that happened, and love where you're going, love the people you're with, right? Because once those people are gone, you don't want to live in the regret of, man, maybe I should have told them something, right? So it's stuff like that, right? I lost my mother at a young age, and it's like, yeah, damn, I don't have that no more. But I see people that do, and I'm like, hey, enjoy those moments, man, because it's not going to last a lifetime. Um, look, live your life, right? Do what you feel like you need to do, but obviously, don't overdo it, right? You got to go to work all Monday. Don't get drunk on a Sunday, but have fun, right? Life's all about having fun, because at the end of the day, right, your money ain't coming with you to the grave, right? Everybody you worked alongside might not be there at your funeral, right? Everyone you met might not be there. So just enjoy the people you're with and the people you're around, and, have a great time.
Man, you got words. You got words, man. You can keep talking like this is great.
I keep talking, but it might get repetitive. You know what I'm saying?
No, no, it's okay. Hey, man, that's all right. And, like with that being said, like, and that's okay if it gets repetitive, because those are important things. And sometimes hearing that multiple times, that's it's gonna keep reinforcing those things. It's like doing something over and over. People call that like your maniac, your chaos. But when you're being and remembering and thinking about those things, being consistent at it,
Mhm.
that consistency is gonna build. And especially when you're understanding and appreciating the things that everything that you've been talking about, being consistent at just loving where you're at and where you're going, and just trying to strive for better. That consistency is gonna get there, whether you like it or not. I think it's gonna get you there. So I
Yeah.
think everything you're saying is great, man. Great.
And the biggest thing, and I always try to tell people, and my athletes too, is like, hey, control what you can. The past you can't control. It's done. It's in the history books. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny too, because last summer I was hanging out with my best friend Mo. We were out, down at the Hudson River, and it's like, and he was like taking pictures, putting stuff on the gram. I said, well, why you put everything on the gram for? He's like, nah, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, bro, I never do that. I said, my happiness is, not telling everybody where I'm at 24/7. Like, I'm cool. Like, I remember there was a point in time when nobody knew I had a kid, because I didn't post about it on the gram. So it's like, yeah, but that's my happiness. It doesn't have to be publicized 24/7. But I think too, Ange, like, now that we're on the time, I don't mean to go off on a tangent. I do sometimes, but I think like social media creates that construct sometimes where it's like, you make it hard for people to live their life. You know what I'm saying? Because they're not in the moment. They're in the iPhone, or the whatever phone you have, and then they're into it too much. Where it's like, sometimes just separate yourself from that stuff, man. Just enjoy what's around you for now, because the camera phone, whatever. I grew up in the '90s, bro. We was on the block chilling. No one had a camera phone.
Mhm.
So, and just having those memories without having to post it, and showing all your followers what you're doing. Find happiness in that, because I'll tell you what, it's cool living a secretive life sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah,
Have
yeah.
something to talk about on Monday. Shoot, when you go back to work, right?
Yeah, man, definitely. And there's power in silence, and there's power in privacy. And I think you're saying that like it's it's like living in the moment truly is. It's like it is nice to capture things for sure and have those, but something about just being present and separate and just seeing what's around you. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I've there's times when I have to separate from then like social media or just phones. So it just helps to sometimes just reset yourself and just kind of just be where you're at, be right where your feet are at. So thank
Yep.
you, thank you. Man, I know I don't want to hold you because I know you're a busy guy and you got a lot of things going on, but everything that you've been saying on and that we've been talking about, I think is gold, man. So I mean, just keep doing what you're doing, And for anybody who wants to, connect with you, learn more about you, and then just hear your story and the things that you're doing, where is the best place that they can find you?
Um, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm more active on LinkedIn um, than Twitter, but I'm also somewhat active on Instagram. But Instagram's become my nighttime real guilty pleasure of comedy. So if you DM me and I don't DM you back, you probably ended up in like that one folder that you kind of got to navigate through. But I would say LinkedIn's the best way to get in touch with me if that's um, if everyone has a LinkedIn, because I'm more active on that than the other social media platforms.
Awesome, man. Perfect.
Or email, right? Grassi at monmouth.edu. That's that thing pops up in the inbox, never goes to spam.
Awesome, man. Cool. Well, definitely. I know and I hope that people will reach out to you because I know you got a wealth of knowledge, and what you're doing right now, it's gold. It's really great. And hearing the humanistic part of like, having and the work-life balance and just loving it, and just, I really think it's awesome that, you're trying to get your daughter to do her best, on those Saturday events. So I think that's awesome. But I think that people, if they reach out to you, they're gonna get a great guy. So thank you, man, for coming on. It's been great having you on, man.
All right, Ange, appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, man. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I also want to thank our wonderful guests for coming on today. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at Love Life Live Life Fitness. Stay tuned for our next episode, and as always, love your life and live your life.